Hello, this is an assessment of a Steinway Model B size, that's 210 centimetres long, made in 1883. Now, pianos made of this age have a full iron frame. Steinways have a full iron frame, so there's no reason why it shouldn't last just as long as a younger piano. In fact, they're extremely well made, the original Steinways. We're just looking at the casework here. Apparently it was black at one stage, the client said, and this looks like rosewood here, so I don't know if those legs, well, they'd obviously could be, they're not normally rosewood anyway, so they could be made in to look like the rest of the piano if you wanted to, but it does look very smart like it is, I think. You can see the rosewood round here. This, I believe it's rosewood, so if that was black originally, it's remarkable how the black's come out of it, and it's looking very good, I think. It could be repolished, obviously we can redo that. It does look very pale for rosewood. On the other hand, there's a light source very near the piano here, shining onto here, so if it was repolished it would fade with the light here, so it's already quite a sort of faded rosewood colour, which is very pleasant. So this is the position that we normally find pianos in when we go to tune them, but this bit's been held back, and the colour is the same, as you can see, and if I lift the lid up, the colour here is roughly the same too, maybe slightly darker, so it does tend to fade if it's left in a light position. I think it's very pretty like it is, but it could be repolished, obviously. You can see the rosewood grain here. I'm pretty sure the whole thing is rosewood. I'm not brilliant on woods at all, so if you are a wood person and like to correct me, that would be fine. It looks like rosewood to me, and I'll just have a quick look round the other side. Here's the long side, so again it looks very integral with the rest of it, and it can be repolished, but as I say, because it's likely to fade with the light source, so maybe leave it as it is, I think, is what we would suggest, but whatever the client wants, obviously we will do. So it's got New York and Hamburg written on the fall here, though at that time the pianos were mostly made in New York, I think. If you are a Steinway specialist, you might like to make some comments underneath that. Well, on the frame there's no Hamburg written at all. We'll look at the frame in a minute, but just want to have a quick look at the keys while we're here, and certainly we could improve that, really replacing that. It's broken there, and the replacement here is a bit on the light side, so we'd like to improve that. You can see these little lines here on the front. That is quite typical of a lot of ivory keys, so they can't really be improved. You can replace the top. There's a bit of a bump there that can be less so, definitely, so we can definitely improve the keys, or replace them completely. A lot of times, in fact Steinway themselves, apparently, if they fully restore, they insist on replacing ivory keys, I believe, because nowadays it's harder to buy and sell ivory anyway. You have to have a certificate if you do, and it's getting much more complicated, though ivory does feel very nice to play. This is the typical desk for most Steinways of that age, so many Steinways have this style of desk, and I think that's rosewood too. So looking at the acoustic side of it, it's been well restored. We can see, if you look here, this later ones say Hamburg here as well, so that one just says Steinway and Son. Did you say New York and Hamburg? On most of the Steinways you're going to see say New York and Hamburg, and on the other side of the frame too. I just want to look at something which we found really interesting. There's the patents, and obviously that's common on a lot of Steinways. So these older ones, casting slightly different, and there's a number at the back there. You can see the date, which is 28, I think, 783, if you can read that there, 28/7/83. So that was the casting date, 1883. There's a number under there. I'm not sure what that refers to, but if you're a Steinway specialist, you might be able to help us there. And there seems to be a 1 here as well. I'm not sure if that's a 1, but if you can help, please do put comments underneath. That'd be really useful. We did discover something interesting here, and that is the last 7 tenor strings go underneath the frame here, and the hitch pins are at the end here. That's something I don't think I've noticed before. I don't think we've fully restored one of this age before, but we'd love to do so at some stage. But whether that was something they tried for a while, or whether they always did it on that age Steinway, would be really very helpful if you can put a comment on that as well. And my colleague lifted the lid up so we could get a bit more light on it. We can see here one of the screws has come out here, so that's just a minor thing, but we noticed it because we lifted the lid up. The piano's been restrung without changing the rest plank, which is fine because the tuning pins are very tight. My colleague who's pitch raised the piano says he's very happy with the tightness of the pins. If you look at the very bottom base here, this is very common that they're the largest possible pins. So if you did want to restring again, this one's extremely fat. This is a standard medium star lever. So this one's very fat, and if you did want to restring again, you'd have to replace the rest plank. That's the wood under here. You wouldn't have any option but to do that. So when the piano was restored, it was restored by an experienced Steinway restorer. So he would have changed this rail here, the wood inside here, because very often on Steinways these are taken off and put back on. And by the way, if you take a screw off, you should turn it backwards to make sure it's in the right groove before you turn it that way. But with them being taken off and put back on, very often they get loose. So you need to replace the wood here, and the wood there has been replaced, so they're very, very tight. And looking at other aspects of it, this is Renner parts, I'm pretty sure about that. So you've got the Renner bottom action and top action here, and Renner hammers too. Now interestingly, these bottom hammers have got Steinway stamped on them. Now Steinway hammers are made by Renner. Apparently what they do, according to the chief technician who explained this to us, chief technician for Steinway on a course that we went on, he said that what happens is that Renner hammers, when Steinway get the Renner hammers, they reject some of them. So the difference between Renner and Steinway hammers, he was saying, is that the Steinway hammers are the same as Renner hammers, except they will reject a few of them. Not quite sure on what basis, but if you're do a lot of Steinways, you might be able to help us with that. So these have got Steinway stamped on the base here. So they would be Steinway Renner hammers, and a little bit more refined perhaps than the ones that Renner originally sent them through. So I'm not quite sure about the exact that. They've replaced the rollers here, as you can see. These need lubricating with talc. I'm not sure if I saw any talc lubricant on them, but certainly that's something we need to do. Now when this piano was tuned earlier, it was noticed that the action has a bit of a heavy feel to it, though as we'll see soon the key weighting is not that heavy. But if you look at this hammer, the back check here is catching the hammer just before it lifts, more so on some of the others than this one, but if you let that drop, then the back check is catching it, and that is causing it to feel heavier. So you've got to overcome that initial inertia, and that's on several of them. So obviously when the new hammers are put on, it's very important to check that there is a distance there. Now in fact what's happened is, as we'll see in a minute, the hammer blow is a bit great, so these hammers need lifting up to about there, and then they're not going to catch anyway. So basically lifting up the hammer, reducing the hammer blow, is the way that's going to immediately be cured. They're quite close, as you can see, so that's not really a problem as long as they don't actually catch, and they check very well. So the hammer height's raised by adjusting the capstans under here. You can see that hammer's a bit higher. That's middle C that I've just done, and it's like, if I turn it, I don't know if you're going to it's difficult to show you this, because there we go. If we turn it, it gets higher. It needs to go up by, well, it's about 50 to 51 millimeters, so 47 will be ideal, so about 4 millimeters. Obviously going to do them as accurate as we possibly can, so that needs doing because they are catching on the back checks. So now that's been done, you see note 40 middle C is not catching anymore, and it's quite a lot higher, and if it bounces down it won't catch the back check anymore. It's quite common we find that problem, unfortunately. With new hammers they might be a bit thicker, so I could shave off some of the hammer, but in this case the hammer blow is too great anyway, so we need to reduce it to about 47. So if I press middle C down gently, then it immediately responds. If I press this E down gently, there's a resistance. You can feel it straight away. So if you can feel that on a piano, then that might well be the cause. Of course there are other things that could be causing that, but it's very, very common. That's extremely common actually, so there's something to check. If you do think your touch is a bit heavy, just see if the back checks are catching on, and then it's a question then of just raising up the capstans a bit, and that will overcome it. Something else we did notice is also that the springs are not quite strong enough, so if we let go, that's the middle C, so if I play it and then let go a little bit, the hammer should move upwards straight away. So let's have a look at C sharp, and that's not going upwards either, hardly, and that one's not going upwards. If the spring's too weak, then they won't perform properly because the jack won't go back under. So there's the jack here. Then that jack won't go back under at all because the spring's not holding the lever up. So we just pull the spring out with a spring regulating tool. It's a homemade one in this case. It's got 2 notches at the bottom there. This helps to pull the spring out. So then we've got to bend the spring, and it's difficult to know how much to bend it. A lot of actions have a regulating screw here instead of a different style of spring, which is actually much more technician friendly. For most Becksteins and most Blüthners have those. So I've just put the spring back in, and playing the note, if we lift my finger very gently, it will go upwards. There we are. So that's probably not quite as strong as we want it. Let's probably do it a bit more than that. You want it strong so it doesn't feel in the fingers, but it's very positive, and then the piano springs will stay strong for many, many years to come. That's certainly functioning fine. So having assessed the piano, there's quite a lot of work we can do to improve it, though it's been well restored in general. So lubricating the rollers is something I didn't feature much on this. I featured it on other videos if you're interested to try and find that. If you just put lubricating rollers, you'll probably find one. And regulating the springs, we've tried to show that, and the hammer blow, those are both really important. So in my opinion, the bass on these older Steinways, there's nothing to compare with them. Just so beautiful, so rich, so lush a bass. And if we come past here, this is, you can't find the break points, which is the point at which the strings cross over. That's probably why they made these strings longer, putting them underneath the frame, as we showed earlier. That's actually the lowest tenor, and that's the first bass. So a good manufacturer's trying to get these to sound identical. So the E was this note here, and the F was this note over here. So to be able to match the tone going to different parts of the soundboard is real skill. Now the down weight is slightly on the high side, but not too high really, a little bit high. If we lubricate the rollers, that will tend to bring it down, and if we have to fine regulate to get it a bit more even, plus or minus 2 grams is what we're aiming for. 53 in the middle isn't too bad really, but I think the heaviness is more a question of the back checks catching, so that will sort that out. But we'll look at the piano once we've finished anyway to check it. So that's a Steinway 210 centimeters long, made in 1883. And really the older Steinways have some of the very best tones of the lot. Now that's the case with a lot of makes. Blüthner we feature a lot, and again the older Blüthners have such a wonderful sound, and the old Becksteins too. So really don't think you're buying a very old piano, it's not going to be as good as a modern piano. It's just a question of working on the action to make it just like a new piano, and it can be just as good as a new piano. I'm finding it very hard to press up and down the pedal compared to other pianos, so that's something I would definitely want to do if it was my piano, is to weaken the pedal spring. If you've got a piano that you would like to have restored, please do let us know. We're very happy to do an assessment, and then you can think about what you'd like to do. It's so often that when we tune pianos we notice there's a lot more work than he's doing. Thank you very much for listening.